Let's talk about fancy hands. And obviously, we're speaking about virtual assistants. And the question is this VA service really worth it? So here's a presentation I want you to really pay attention to. So when we think about fancy hands, I want you to think about a straightforward and transparent virtual assistant service that is really ideal for individuals who need a regular help, but who don't want the hassle of a big contract. So if you are in that category, you will love Fancy Hands, okay? And so the assistants at Fancy Hands can take care of your schedule, purchase and research products, tackle your inboxes and handle travel requests, and you can access their services by text, email, or through Fancy Hands on Android and iOS apps. So the flexibility is there in terms of how the platform is set up from the get-go. And so Fancy Hands services are accessed by buying request. So basically, we're speaking about a small package that will cost you 18 to 25 bucks per month. And here you have that package includes three, for instance, while the Excel products cost about 150, 175. It also includes a whopping 30 monthly requests. So it's all about a request, like a request process, okay? So dedicated assistants are available if you need a bespoke service, and Fancy Hands also offers larger service packages for businesses, for even enterprises. So it's all about your needs, okay? So there is a more easygoing virtual assistant service without the contracts and formality of some others. But don't make the mistake of thinking that Fancy Hands is not professional. It's still a top tier choice, especially if you need casual help and don't want to sign up for a contract. So let's say you just need a top tier help for 3 months, for 30 days, for 2 weeks. This company will be a great call. Okay, so think about the fact that you have a player that has been around for nearly 15 years. Can you imagine? I mean, the company was started in 2010, so this is really cool. I mean, they've been around for nearly 15 years, and so they actually offer virtual assistants for both personal and professional needs. So it's one of those things where you have to see what works for you and how many requests you want to buy, because their pricing model is based on the number of requests, as I said a little earlier, the number of requests required rather than an hourly paid assistant. By the way, boss, welcome back to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Make yourself comfortable. You are going to enjoy today's conversation. Let me break it down for you. When we talk about Fancy Hands, what kind of pros and cons are we talking about? So here's the evaluation you really need to keep in mind, okay? I want to first talk to you about the pros. What are the reasons to sign up with Fancy Hands, okay? First of all, there are no contracts. Nobody trying to play games with you. Nobody trying to tie you in something you don't want, okay? No monthly contracts, no yearly contracts, no quarterly contracts, none of that. Nothing really, no shenanigans at all, okay? No contracts. Just buy the number of requests, and that's it. It's very easy to use thanks to mobile apps. You have a single task specialist. They're available, okay? You have a service also that's available for personal as well as professional assistance. So this is really good in terms of flexibility. So, Fancy Hands really is adding an extra layer of flexibility here. We love that a lot. And what we love about Fancy Hands is that you can leverage their size to benefit from discount through the number of requests you buy. Very simple pricing structure, and you have a service that performs personal and professional tasks at a very high level. And what are the cons here? I just give you the pros. Let's talk about the cons. Well, what are the reasons to avoid Fancy Hands? Well, it is actually less suitable for very big enterprises and very big projects. And longer projects may be costly because they will use up several of your 20 minutes task credits. Client does not automatically receive the same VA twice, so that's really sort of a bummer. If you are comfortable with a VA, you want to use the same VA on future projects, and you also have on-demand results. Okay, so it's one of those things where when you actually analyze the pros and cons, and you want to strike the best deal among those two sides of the same equation, you have to really understand that Fancy Hands continue to provide businesses with the best in single tasks that last a maximum of 20 minutes. You can work with a different VA every time or choose a long-term relationship. Both options give you administrative control, usage tracking, and pay-as-you-go pricing which is why really we love this service, especially when it comes to on-demand tasks. Boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about Fancy Hands. Is this virtual assistant service really worth it? Let's now talk about pricing. So I want you to look right now on the screen here. As I said a little earlier, you don't have prices, you don't have dollar amounts actually when you go to Fancy Hands. Things go through, I mean, they function by request, okay? So you have the small, the medium, the large, and the XL. So the small, 3 requests a month, that's like $17.99 a month, approximately. This could change. I mean, they're charging you $6 per request. And for medium, you have $6 per request. So you have 5 requests a month. So that approximates to $30 a month. For large, you have if you have 15 requests a month, we are speaking about 75 approximately a request a month. So that translates to a $5 per request. And for 30 requests a month, you have $149 a month. And this again translates to $5 per request. Okay. And so it really depends upon what you want. Now, tasks are assigned based on availability. So it's unlikely you will work with the same VA twice in a row unless you negotiate for a dedicated assistant, right? It's one of those things where you have to see if it works for you in the first place. As a standout feature that competitors do not offer, Fancy Hands can integrate into your Asana or Trello accounts. So this enables you to assign tasks in those programs and follow their progress. I mean, Asana and Trello are project management software tools. I mean, pretty popular ones. Now, there is no formal guarantee for the work performed, but the company will work with you to a fair resolution. Okay, so you have monthly rates from requests that you are making. The key benefits with this pricing model is that you have one-off or a repeat request, so you have the flexibility. You also have the ability to scale real fast. Now, one thing for sure, there is no free trial. So when you think about Fancy Hint, you are not having like you don't have the chance to try the product to see if you like it before actually signing up. When you sign up, you start paying right away. I mean, it's just you might think, well, this is a disappointment, but no, because they know of the quality of the service, and they want you to really start paying right away for it. Let me talk to you about the value added here. So when you think about the Fancy Hands, what kind of value added does this platform bring? Okay, it's important to really understand that Fancy Hands are really, when they have a free consultation with you, they're always trying to make sure that you are as specific as possible because they want to have a clear idea about the needs, about your request. Okay, what kind of help they can really bring to your table. So this is really good, and so Fancy Hands also gets you in the outsourcing, delegating mindset. So you start to see all the little time leaks in your day that distract you from what you're actually meant to be doing. So once you start handing them off, it's addictive. Okay, it's one of those things where you really have to make sure that you really actually limit yourself when doing some pretty distracting work. Okay, and Fancy Hands also really adds a lot of value here because it frees up both you and your team's time and energy, especially if you have multiple teams actually working from multiple areas. It's important to think about to think about resource allocation. Think about the resource being allocated to more value-adding projects. Okay, and this is an important element. So aside from freeing up your time, it can also free up your team's time. Delegating the little nitty gritty that happens every day to a Fancy Hands lets your assistant or your coder or your project manager spend their time on projects and tasks that will have a much bigger impact on your business. And also, it helps to keep everyone in their zone of genius, not just you. So, which is something that your team will appreciate. So this is one of the most important elements to really think about. Now, the Fancy Hands will work with you. It's just a lot better to contact the company first. Don't actually decide everything beforehand. Okay, contact the company and discuss your activity, discuss your needs discuss your requirements, discuss your deliverables. Don't try to buy the request without talking to the company first. Okay, that way you have a clear idea what kind of needs you have, and what kind of request, what kind of cost will come out of that. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about Fancy Hands, and we're just talking about this virtual assistant service in and out. I want to talk to you about staff onboarding and management. Basically, to actually reach the type of quality, the type of expertise that Fancy Hands brings to the table, they have to have a they have to have a straightforward process in terms of staff onboarding and management. So how do they do that? Well, first of all, the application process for VAs at Fancy Hands is pretty straightforward. So, basically, they just go to the application page and they sign up. They will take an aptitude test. That's what I was just telling you a little earlier. So, as a customer of Fancy Hands, you benefit from the quality that comes from that aptitude test. So it's really good. So you also have general admin knowledge. So things like who uses Google Docs, who uses Excel, there are also a couple of questions about grammar. So, because they just want to make sure that you are getting somebody who can speak English and who can understand the English language also. And also, especially if that person has to write, you want to make sure that grammatical, like syntax, all those elements are really, really well taken care of. Okay. And so for starters, if you need to be comfortable on the phone, so virtual assistants at Fancy Hands need to be comfortable on the phone and be able to navigate the internet with ease, and so as a VA at Fancy Hands, Google will become your new best friends. Okay. And you are able to claim tasks at Fancy Hand real fast, and you are able to complete tasks real fast as well. Remember that Fancy Hands has a time set for tasks to be delivered, and those time sets are way earlier than what the client actually has requested. And Fancy Hands also trains its VAs in dealing with clients. So basically, because client interaction is an important element, and Fancy Hands just wants to make sure that you are actually, as a VA working with a company, you are well equipped to actually handle all clients' interaction. And one thing I want to say here is that basically, when a client receive a completed task, they can respond to it, at which point the VA will get an alert that they need to review and respond to them. And there is a time limit, 8 to 12 hours for responding. And this is for VAs, so that there is some kind of accountability here. So we love that a lot. So one thing I want to say also in terms of staff onboarding and management at Fancy Hands, there is a company support. So basically, you are able to get all kinds of training, all kinds of support, all kinds of communication from top management. So if you are a Fancy Hands client, you can be sure that the end results will be quality work by all the VAs, because they're getting the support and they're getting paid a pretty reasonably too. I mean, you should not want to. This is not an investment banking sort of salary, but you do have folks who are most of the time who are not in the States, who are actually paid pretty well, depending upon the geography they're in. And this is all we want to talk about. And the bottom line here is that Fancy Hands actually trains its VAs. The reason why the company is so popular with customers is because their employees are pretty straightforward, and they're pretty well served in terms of job availability, in terms of variety, in terms of how customers interact with them. So you have a certain degree of professionalism that's there as well. Now, if you want to go with Fancy Hands, you got to pay attention to, if you want to go to Fancy Hands as a client, you got to pay attention to three things before you actually reach out to them. They're the target audience that they are going after. So we're talking about the demographics, for instance, also the geography, the location of the companies they want to target, and also the last thing is that you got to think about the chronology. I mean, chronology means that you have to think about the timing, okay? And so that's really good in terms of you managing your tasks via these platforms pretty properly. And one thing I want to say also is that when we think about Fancy Hands, we want to think about automation also. So Fancy Hands is developing a third party, if you will, third party app, third party platform that will really use that will heavily use AI, artificial intelligence, to sort of automate certain tasks, including your own task as a client. So you don't have to manually do some of the tasks anymore. Fancy Hands will take care of everything on your behalf. So what is our verdict here? So should you go with Fancy Hands, yes or no? Fancy Hands, yes. The company is actually well established. I mean, they started in 2010, so this is really cool, and they've been around for a while. And in terms of security, they're safe also. So Fancy Hands is really ideal for someone who needs simple tasks done quickly without the back and forth of access negotiating for prices. It is actually designed to be an on-demand solution, providing quick action. So this is really cool. And the company prides itself on quick action, being able to fulfill tasks quickly on demand. So if that sounds like a music to your ears, you want to go with Fancy Hands, okay? Fancy Hands. The website also touts that all VAs are US based, making it much easier to communicate. Now, this is not true. They have VAs outside the US, but they do not. They really don't communicate around that. I mean, they do have US-based VAs in certain locations, but not all of them are based in this country. Okay, and you are also able to get things done a lot faster. So, what are the rivals that this Fancy Hands company is dealing with? Well, you have a WishUp. So WishUp is a great alternative with highly competitive prices. And you also have a Red Butter. I mean, not Butter, Red Butler. my fault. You have a Red Butler, you have a FSIs, and you have MyTasker. So those are really great companies to actually try if you are looking for a VA service. And you also have OK Relax. OK Relax is kind of cool also in terms of flexibility. OK Relax might be a little more expensive, but what we love about OK Relax is that it really takes care of the three elements that I just spoke to you about earlier. Like, you have a company that thinks about chronology, so that's the timing. You have a company that thinks about the scalability, thinks about efficiency, and also thinks about affordability is kind of important because the last thing you want is to actually spend a lot of time actually buying requests through Fancy Hands and not getting the results. So that's really an important element to keep in mind so that you don't actually make the mistake that a lot of players make when they are asked when they're thinking about switching from Fancy Hands to an alternative or even using Fancy Hands in the first place. Okay, remember that Fancy Hands is great for quick tasks. Okay, they're not there for long-term projects. They're there for quick tasks that need completion real fast, and this is where Fancy Hands really adds value. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. In today's conversation, I gave you a talk about the Fancy Hands, and I give you the presentation, the evaluation, the pricing, the value added, the staff onboarding and management, and now I'm giving you the verdict. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.